Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. How you doing? Good to see you, Dave.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. I want to revisit something that we talked about in our first time together when I asked you how we can pray for God behind bars. And God behind bars, we'll let you, of course, talk more about that, but it's a prison ministry. You've got a million things going on for those behind bars, but you asked for prayer for people who are working within the industry, so to speak. You asked for prayer for law enforcement. You asked for prayer for those working within the prisons, the prison systems themselves, administrators and so forth. I think that's really important. When we lost our son to murder, we were living at that time in British Columbia, Canada, and we, of course, were lost. And I could tell you story after story of how God sent these people to help us through the whole legal system and everything. But there was a desire on our part to minister to our offender. We wanted to meet him. We wanted to spend time with him. And we began that process. Well, there is a thing in British Columbia called victim services. There's around the US too have these kind of things. And what we learned is our victim services person was a pastor. And he said to me, he goes, don't make a big deal of that, because I'm not sure that British Columbia knows that, that I was a pastor. But here's what was cool about that. When we asked to meet with our guy, and we spent probably 8 hours with him, and we, tried to give him the gospel every which way, but this man knew exactly what we were trying to do. And he could work lockstep with us because he understood the mission. And that opened up a whole lot of doors for my wife and I. And then even after we moved back here to Minnesota and he was incarcerated, we were able to work through him to continue to communicate. And so when you talk about those type of people, I can tell you that they're very important, and they for you kind of make or break your opportunity to minister to those who are incarcerated, right?
Absolutely. And if I may, what a wonderful testimony of a forgiveness beyond most people's understanding. What an example. Your church is so fortunate to have you lead in that manner and be able to rest on that testimony. But yes, the folks that are they're charged with safe security. I mean, at the end of the day, they're in many ways they're like parents. In many ways they don't want to discipline if they don't have to, but that's what they're charged to do. And at the end of the day, it is a daunting task.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard task. And the fear inside some of those institutions amongst the staff is tangible. They always have to be on guard. It's a very hard job. So that is worth praying for. Now, God behind bars is got a million tentacles going on. The thing that really intrigues me, though, is the church planting part. Because you think, church planting? Like, what are you talking about? In prisons? What say you? Yes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our goal is to do everything possible that we can to replicate what you and I would enjoy on Saturday night or Sunday morning or Wednesday evenings. Anything that we can experience in the free world is our goal to do inside a prison. And what that entails is a volunteer team going to the prison each and every week, a state-of-the-art AVL system, audio, visual, and lighting system that can broadcast a message that is captured at your church on the weekend. Recognizing first-time guests, doing small group Bible studies, doing family reunification events where we're bringing children to the prisons if the state will allow us to do so. Anything that we can do that we do normally at church, we want to be able to do that in a really difficult environment, but make it not difficult. Why? And offenders will ask us that often, like, why do you guys do this? like, we haven't seen equipment this nice and of ever. And we're like, well, why? But you deserve everything that we're enjoying. There's no difference between us. We seek the same self-worth, same self-esteem, safe value. Everything is the same. So why wouldn't we?
Mhm.
And that's usually enlightening. It's number one, it's enlightening to those that don't usually aren't treated like that. And number two, it's enlightening for us at the God Behind Bars team to see the support that we have from our church community and from the overall public at large of getting behind what we're doing. They may not want to go in, but they support us going in.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And you're having incredible success. On your website, over 1 million inmates reached with the gospel. That's pretty exciting stuff.
That is exciting stuff, and we do all we can to never take it for granted. When I look at our average weekly attendance, when you add up all of the church campuses, I believe it's over 7,000 people a week are attending a church service across all of the prison campuses. I think at last tune, I think it was 214,467 was our average weekly users on the Pando app.
Wow.
That means that over 214,000 sets of eyeballs physically logged into their Pando app at least once last week. Um, the amount of children that we have seen reunited with their parents. I think we're over 12,000 children at this point. So when we tally up all of that stuff, I think the number may be north of the stat on the website right now. Um, but it's like I said, it's one of those things where we do our best to show up and do what we can, but ultimately get out of the way and let the Lord do his thing.
Yeah, yeah, and your passion is obvious, and I think that's rubs off on everybody around you. I'm sure you mentioned the Pando app. We talked a little bit about that last time. It's this wonderful tool that you've developed, and it goes on tablets. Prisoners can watch Christian content. It's awesome.
Yes, yes, and the way it's set up is when the app launches on a new tablet, um, a person will open his or her tablet the next morning, and the Pando app is already downloaded. They don't have to download it. They don't have to go find it. They just get a notification. The new app, the Pando app, is now on your tablet. So that's a wonderful way. And like we had mentioned, the partners like you that provide content that inspires folks that society has written off. Um, if I could articulate it even better, is that every word that you speak on the weekend, every single word, there is a person somewhere in despair, feeling worthless, that may find the strength in your words to literally live one more day.
Wow. Hmm.
A gift of shampoo or soap that your church may mobilize that we can get inside to a prison may keep someone from committing suicide because somebody cared about them.
Hmm.
The access that the Pando tab that the tablets and that the Pando app gives us, it's a reach that has never been had before. It wasn't possible. So we're grateful for states and staffs that embrace that technology because in their world, the technology does come with a risk. Their digital infrastructure is antiquated. They're running on currently the tablets are running on systems that are more comparable to like an iPhone 4 or 5.
Yeah. Hmm.
So they've taken a risk, but they're seeing the fruits of it. They're seeing the gentleman that Jake was speaking about 2 years ago, and he was leaving an event, and a gentleman walked up behind him, grabbed his shoulder. You don't do that in a prison. The gentleman grabbed his shoulder, whipped him around. And officers were there, and Jake just said, "What can I do for you, sir?" And the gentleman just said, "I've been in this place 25 years. And there was a song that came off the Pando app, and I need you to guarantee me that song's going to get back on because that's the only peace I've had in this place." And here we are. We learned of this gentleman's behavioral records. We learned that uh, It was not the case of well-behaved inmate, poor citizen. It was poorly behaved inmate, poor citizen.
Hmm.
And the officers, we had learned that since he had engaged the Pando app, he had not committed any infractions.
Wow.
And he was so passionate about losing that worship song that we were able to get it back on for him.
It's good.
We had to call a few big music companies to make it happen, but they did it. So the access, if there's a theme that I can deliver for everybody listening, thank you for your support, because the access for these folks is access that they don't get. I mean, when you and I look at our phones and there's 200 apps on our screen, we take so for granted
Yeah.
what is available to us. Sometimes it's almost inundation and too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the Pando app, all in one shot. We often say if YouVersion and Netflix had a baby, that was the Pando app.
I think that's one of the greatest things that that we can ever invest in. You know, I almost feel like prisons in America are kind of like Samaria. You know, Jesus told his disciples, like, I'm going to go a little out of the way today. And his disciples, of course, were well-meaning, not always like, you know, quite tuned in, just like we would have been wandering around with him. And he went way out of the way, and he went to a place where Jews never went. And he went to he went to a spot where he knew the person he was going to meet. He cared about that person. And the thing about that story that we don't focus in enough is that woman was not loved by society. She was not loved by the men that she had lived with. She was an outcast in her village. The person who loved her was Jesus. The disciples didn't understand that even. And I feel like what you're doing is you're going into Samaria, you're going to these places where society kind of doesn't really want to, like, good, they're in, right? We're safe. And I really want to applaud you for your passion. And what I love about what you're saying is that your philosophy is that these people deserve exactly what we, meaning those on the outside, have. Because they're every bit as made in the image of God. They're every bit as loved by God, right? And do you see the evangelical church as a whole, big C? I guess the church even it's more. I guess the church is more than just the evangelical church, but are we moving more toward accepting and moving into these ministry areas? Do you see positive things happening in that regard, or are you still kind of fighting the same battle that you have for years?
I do. I do see progress moving forward. And by the way, our thrift store is called Castaways. So
That's
I love the
awesome. I
reference.
like that.
I,
Yeah.
I love the reference to that. But yes, we do see progress. About 3 or 4 years ago, we had at that tenure, I should say, that experience level, we at that point we had reached out to I would say, all of the churches across the nation that we had a first or second person relationship with, meaning someone we knew them directly or someone we knew them directly. And at one point we were thinking, ooh, maybe we have now spoken to the overwhelming majority of churches that may have an interest in prison ministry. I'm so happy to tell you that we were completely wrong. We were wrong. What we learned is that we hadn't done a good enough job telling the story of what God was doing. And once we started doing a better job of telling the story of what God was doing, it went from us telling people what was going on to the phone ring and the emails coming our way of, hey, we would like to get involved. Can you educate us more of what you all are doing? So yes, I absolutely think there is progress. I think that predominantly, many of our church partners are wonderful and really rest in God's grace and God's love and God's repentance, and an acts of repentance is grace abounds, love abounds, and I believe there's a healthy balance of, hey, but there's no doubt Jesus commands us to serve at a greater level, to love at a greater level, and to turn back and turn away from prior indiscretions. but we'll always have that grace. So we absolutely feel progress, because there is no shortage of folks that want to get involved, and um, I would say outpacing state agencies that what we are bringing to the table, asking for nothing other than access. And there are plenty of great bodies of Christ that are ready to go.
Yeah, that's really neat. All right, in our short time we have left, we have a lot of people here that are going to be intrigued. They're going to want to find out more about God behind bars, and they're going to want to pray for you. What's the biggest hurdle you're facing right now as you look forward in your ministry to the next coming years, as you strategize, as you vision what you want to do?
Thank you. The younger incarcerated population and the families of those that are incarcerated. The younger incarcerated population, younger, still running the streets inside prisons. So I would say the hurdle there is that their hearts are softened and that they are more open to Jesus earlier in their life. No different than I wish I was myself.
Mhm.
The families and children, we are very cognizant and very acute to victims. We know that there is carnage. Some crimes have left large wakes, and for families and children to um, to find forgiveness in their hearts, to find an inspiration through the Lord that, hey, we can have a relationship with the family member or loved one that's incarcerated. I think those are spiritual hurdles, emotional and sometimes physical limitations based on distance. Those are all things that are hurdles. As far as our ministry goes, other than let's grow our volunteer teams and our team that is committed to doing this each and every day. We can only move as fast as the people that are ready to run.
Mhm.
And if there are more and more people that are interested in what we're doing, I would say not necessarily a hurdle, but that's something that we desire. We desire the kingdom growth, very, very well rounded and grounded, and that people are passionate about wanting to go to prison. Many days, I'd rather go to prison anywhere else. Now that my son has been in prison, he keeps asking me to go back to prison. I would have never thought that in a million years. It's an answered prayer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's watching you, and he's learning by your example, and he sees the joy you have. And it really is neat to watch people being transformed right before your very eyes. There's really kind of nothing like that. How do we get a hold of you, and how do we find out more about God behind bars?
Wonderful. Like our website at godbehindbars.com, there's a connect form there. And my email address is as simple as it can be, dave.martin@godbehindbars.com. It would be my pleasure to field questions and connect people with the people within our organization if they want to serve, learn more about us, understand what we're doing.
All right, even though it's what, 81 degrees there,
It is.
we have still appreciated you, and we have still appreciated your time. And you're a very inspirational guy, and I just want to, I know God's going to continue to use you as you move to the future. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thank you. The pleasure has been mine. It's been an honor. Thank you.